Officer Brandon Kessler slammed his cruiser door and stormed across the pavement. "You! Step away from that car!" he barked, his voice loud enough to make the dog walkers pause and look up. An elderly black man, Samuel Pierce, paused mid-step beside a sleek black sedan. He was dressed in a tweed overcoat, a worn leather satchel resting at his side. His hands didn't move. His expression didn't flinch. Nearby, a young mother tugged her son closer as whispers grew. "Suspicious," someone muttered, "probably casing the car." Kessler approached, full of authority. "That's not your vehicle, old man. Let me see your hands." He reached forward and snatched the satchel, pulling it from Samuel's grip. The sudden motion sent a folder sliding to the ground, its contents spilling. A faint gold badge gleamed. Briefly before Kessler kicked it aside, "If you believe no one should be judged by their appearance, especially by those in power, hit the like button now and subscribe. Type justice in the comments and tell us where you're watching from." This story delivers the most powerful instant karma you'll see all year. The ending will leave you breathless. Samuel Pierce didn't come from power. He came from long Alabama nights and cracked sidewalks that taught him to watch before he spoke. His childhood wasn't full of trophies or praise, just a mother who believed in discipline and a father who believed in silence. The kind of silence that taught survival. By 15, Samuel had memorized every loophole in the juvenile code, just to defend friends who were punished harder for the same mistakes. He worked janitor jobs through college, earned his law degree studying by streetlight when the power got cut. He passed the bar with no fanfare and spent the next 40 years cleaning up the legal messes no one else wanted. Wrongful terminations, racial bias audits, civil misconduct reviews. He was the kind of man the system couldn't buy because he'd already outlived the price. But nobody recognized that man in the tweed coat. Samuel had come back to town to visit his son, Police Chief David Pierce, without announcing himself. Not to test the town, but to test if it had changed. Instead, it reminded him that bias doesn't retire, it just changes uniform. And when he paused near that sedan, it wasn't because he was lost. It was because it was his son's car. Officer Brandon Kessler didn't see any of that. He saw an old black man, one hand near a vehicle that looked too nice. That was all he needed. Across the street, a white man in gym shorts jogged by. Kessler waved at him with a grin. "Morning, sir?" No check, no suspicion. But Samuel? He didn't get a nod. Just steel in the voice and fingers on his coat. Samuel didn't flinch, didn't correct him. He just watched. Because when you've spent a lifetime watching people get misjudged, you know the script by heart. And you know when it's time to let someone finish writing their own mistake. Have you ever felt misjudged before people even knew who you were? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Kessler stepped forward with a swagger sharpened by years of unchecked power. His hand rested near his holster, but it was his eyes that cut deeper, those narrowed slits of judgment, passed down like heirlooms. "I've seen this before," he muttered, just loud enough for those closest to hear. "You people always think you're above the law." Samuel didn't respond, not with words, just the same slow blink that said, "I've heard worse." But his silence seemed to agitate Kessler more than defiance would have. "That car doesn't belong to you," Kessler growled, gesturing toward the luxury sedan. "You're not on the registration. You can't touch it." "I wasn't trying to steal it," Samuel replied evenly. "Then back away before I escalate." Kessler snapped, stepping into his personal space. And just like that, it happened. Kessler reached out, grabbed Samuel by the lapels of his coat, and shoved him hard. The older man staggered backward, striking the curb with the edge of his shoe and collapsing to one knee. His leather satchel burst open on impact, papers scattering across the sidewalk. "Consider that your final warning," Kessler barked. A sharp gasp came from across the street. A teen, hood up, phone already aimed, had caught the moment in perfect frame. But Kessler didn't see him. As Samuel slowly stood, he adjusted the strap of his wristwatch. A faint click barely registered. Over the hum of the wind, a man in a gray jacket standing at a distance flinched slightly, then lifted his own phone and began recording without a word. People were watching now, some with phones, others with silence. A mother clutched her daughter's hand and hurried her along. "Don't get involved," she whispered. "He must have done something," muttered an older man from a bench near the corner store, and like that, assumptions filled the air, thicker than smog. "Hands on the vehicle, now!" Kessler grabbed Samuel's wrist and slammed his palm onto the hood. The metal echoed. Samuel winced, but still didn't speak. A woman in a navy skirt suit started forward from the sidewalk. She opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes burned, but her feet froze. Samuel slowly raised his head. Voice calm. "You're escalating something you don't understand." Kessler smirked. "Try me. What would you do if someone challenged you publicly based only on assumption? Drop your response in the comments. The metal of the car hood burned hot under Samuel's chest as Kessler pressed down harder, twisting his wrist like he was trying to wring truth from bone. "I said don't move," the officer barked, his breath short and his ego taller than his badge. Samuel didn't resist. He didn't push back, but something in his eyes turned colder. Less like fear, more like calculation. The kind of look a man wears when he's 2 steps ahead and just waiting for everyone else to catch up. Across the street, the world stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. A barista at the cafe left a cappuccino overflowing on the counter. A mail carrier froze mid-step, letters forgotten in hand. No sirens, no alarms, just tension, raw and exposed. Samuel raised his head slowly and met Kessler's glare over his shoulder. "I've done nothing wrong, but you're determined to make this something." His voice was even, steady. It wasn't defiance. It was certainty. A second click echoed from Samuel's watch as he adjusted it against the pavement. Subtle. Measured. Across the street, the man in the gray jacket, still recording, tapped his screen twice. Far off, in an unmarked cruiser, a plainclothes officer narrowed his eyes and turned the live stream volume up. "Wait a minute," a woman near the crowd whispered. "I swear I've seen that man before. Wasn't he on the news?" Her friend scoffed. "Probably just another activist, trying to go viral." "On the ground!" Kessler snapped suddenly, shoving Samuel's shoulder with enough force to unbalance him. Samuel staggered but didn't fall. He caught himself with quiet grace, lowered to his knees on his own terms. His palms opened beside him, not in surrender, but in statement. He didn't scream, didn't beg. The silence was deafening. Onlookers murmured. Some nodded along, still unsure. "Can't be too careful these days," one man mumbled. But the 2 young boys on their bikes, they just stared, eyes wide, seeing more than they had words for. They wouldn't forget this moment. They'd remember the silence. From an upstairs window, a teenage girl leaned out with her phone. She didn't yell, just mouthed, "I'm recording." Samuel saw her, nodded once. A connection, a witness. Then he adjusted his satchel strap and slid a pen into the front pocket of his coat. Meaningless. Except it wasn't. In that unmarked cruiser, the plainclothes officer sat up straight. That was the signal. A man sitting on his porch across the street let out a laugh. "What's the old fool trying to prove?" It wasn't real laughter, just nerves wrapped in mockery. A few people joined in, weak chuckles, forced smirks. They didn't know where this was going, and that made them uncomfortable. "Just comply, old man," muttered another. "Why make it worse?" "Probably hiding something," someone added. Their voices were louder now, because deep down they needed to believe he was wrong. They needed to justify standing still. Samuel leaned forward slightly, reaching for the folder that had spilled earlier. "Stop!" Kessler shouted, stepping forward with one hand on his holster. The sound shattered the moment. Even the mocking man on the porch shut up. "I know him," a soft voice called from the side. It was an elderly woman in a modest church dress, hands trembling as she clutched her purse. "He's not who you think he is." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "Truth often does," Kessler sneered. "Ma'am, stay out of this." But she didn't back away. Kessler took a step toward her. "This is a legal matter. Don't make it yours." His tone cracked just enough to betray him. Confidence slipping. Someone brought a tray of bottled water to nearby officers. They took theirs without looking at Samuel. None offered him one. He was still kneeling, still silent, still burning with something deeper than rage. And the world was still watching. What would you do if you were in Samuel's situation? Would you fight back or stay calm and let the truth reveal itself? Tell us in the comments, and if this moment got you fired up, hit like and subscribe. The slap landed like a thunderclap, open palm, full contact, right across Samuel's face. It echoed off car windows, bounced down the sidewalk, and froze the entire street in its tracks. "You think this is a game?" Officer Kessler barked, chest heaving, voice cracking. His composure shattered like glass beneath a boot. Gasps broke from the crowd in a wave. A woman clutched her chest. A man lowered his coffee without drinking. And every phone in the air locked its lens on Kessler's hand, still hovering in the space between violence and regret. "He was resisting!" Kessler shouted, turning to the growing wall of witnesses. "He refused a lawful order." "That's not what we saw," a woman said aloud. Others murmured in agreement. Samuel didn't rise. He didn't flinch. Slowly, he touched his cheek, where the skin still pulsed, and looked Kessler dead in the eye. "All I've ever asked for is fairness." His voice was barely above a whisper, but the street heard it like thunder. A teenage boy near the curb gulped and kept recording. Then Samuel stood. He brushed off his coat, turned toward the sidewalk. People thought he was leaving. Some even sighed. But he stopped, turned, and walked straight back to Kessler, face to face. No words, just presence. "Don't ignore me!" Kessler snapped. His hand reached out again, gripping Samuel's lapel in a desperate grab for control. "That's enough!" someone yelled from the crowd. "You crossed a line!" And just like that, the street turned. Samuel's voice cut through the rising noise. "You just made a mistake, and you did it publicly. What do you think the protagonist should do next? Should he stay quiet, or let the truth shake the room? Let us know in the comments and hit like and subscribe right now." Samuel straightened. Not quickly, not defiantly, but with the weight of a man who had spent decades carrying more than he ever spoke about. The slap still tingled on his cheek, but he didn't touch it this time. His eyes swept across the sidewalk, past the onlookers, past the phones. Then he looked at Kessler, not with fear, not even with anger. Just a tired kind of knowing. "I've tolerated enough," he said. Not to the officer, not even to the crowd. It was to the moment itself. A declaration. The street grew heavier, like it was holding its breath for what would come next. Kessler, flushed and panting, turned to the crowd like a drowning man begging for a lifeline. "This is getting out of control because of all of you," he shouted. "Put your phones down." But no one flinched. The lenses didn't blink. For the first time, Kessler looked alone. Samuel didn't raise his voice. He didn't move with urgency. He simply reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a cloth, and dabbed at the corner of his mouth. Blood smeared red against white linen. Then he adjusted something beneath his collar, a delicate gold chain tucked against his neck. Most didn't notice, but far away, in a black SUV with tinted windows, the plainclothes officer watching the live stream leaned closer. His eyes narrowed. The chain wasn't just jewelry. It was an identifier, a private signal from an internal agency he knew well. Back on the sidewalk, Samuel knelt and retrieved a single torn sheet from his folder. He folded it cleanly, turned to a quiet woman near the crowd, and said softly, "Would you give this to the driver in the gray sedan?" She hesitated only a second, then took it without question and walked away. The sedan's window rolled, down just long enough to accept the page. 10 seconds later, it sped off. No screeching tires, no lights, just purpose. Kessler's jaw tightened. Who are you contacting? His voice cut sharper now, less like an authority, more like a man, who felt the room shifting and didn't know why. Samuel didn't answer, but someone else did. A young man with headphones stepped beside him. You want me to record audio too? Samuel met his eyes. Yes, please. The boy raised his phone and started speaking into the mic. Samuel turned back to the crowd. This was never about the law, he said, voice calm and clear. It's about how easily some people get disrespected, simply because others assume they know who they are. The shift was visible. Even those who had doubted him earlier, those who had chuckled or looked away, now shifted on their feet like their shoes no longer fit. Guilt has a weight you can't wear comfortably. Kessler tried to salvage it, but his mouth betrayed him. You people always make things complicated, he muttered under his breath. The words floated like a poison cloud. A woman near the cafe gasped. A man lowered his camera and stared at the officer like he was seeing him clearly for the first time. There was no more hiding it, no more pretending. Now the crowd wasn't just recording. They were remembering. Even the wind fell still. Somewhere, a bird stopped singing. A car door didn't slam. Silence. Not the kind that's awkward. The kind that comes before something breaks. Samuel reached down and picked up his folder. He didn't wave it, didn't flash it, just opened it slowly and turned it toward the street. Inside, clipped against a glossy black case file, was a federal ID, laminated, embossed, and marked with 3 letters no officer ever wants to see without warning. FOC, Federal Oversight and Compliance. You should have looked closer before. You grabbed me, he said softly. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. A woman in the crowd leaned to her friend and whispered, Wait, is that? The friend didn't answer, because the answer was arriving. What would you do in this situation? Would you stay calm, speak up, or walk away? Comment your thoughts below and hit like and subscribe. The street fell mute. A girl mid-recording let her phone drift down. Even the ice cream truck parked on the corner silenced its jingle. Breath, stillness, eyes wide, no movement. From the unmarked black SUV, a man stepped out. Tall, composed, not in uniform, but somehow unmistakably in charge. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Samuel placed his folder gently on the car hood. The wind caught its edge, revealing a golden, federal seal. It gleamed just long enough to make someone gasp. Kessler stumbled forward, desperate now. What is this? But command had already slipped from his hands. Samuel met his stare, voice even. You'll understand very soon. If you think the antagonist's reaction was uncalled for, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more justice stories like this. Wait, a voice whispered. Hold on. That guy, he's not just anybody. The murmur came from a teenager live streaming at the edge of the crowd. His voice trembled, not from fear, but the realization that something massive was unfolding before them. Heads turned. Phones rose higher. The air buzzed with unspoken questions. From the black SUV, a tall man in a dark navy jacket stepped forward. No gun, no badge on display. But the way he moved made it clear he wasn't here for show. He approached. Samuel quietly leaned in and spoke just loud enough for him to hear. Are you ready, sir? Samuel gave a single nod. Small, controlled, deliberate. The man turned toward the crowd and raised a small radio from inside his coat. Confirm visual, he said. Bring forward unit documentation. Moments later, another vehicle rounded the corner, sleek, government-issued. Its engine purred instead of roared. When it parked, the back door opened and a sealed file was removed, its cover stamped in red. Internal oversight and command chain clearance. A hush swept through the crowd like a wave crashing without water. Then came the final piece. Out stepped a composed woman in uniform, silver hair tied back in a tight bun. Her presence silenced even the cars passing by. She didn't speak to the cameras. She didn't address the street. She walked straight to Samuel, nodded respectfully, and asked aloud, "Sir, are you okay?" It was the title. "Sir," said with intention. Then she turned to the onlookers, holding up the file. "Please, if you're recording, keep recording." She flipped the first page. "This man is not a suspect," she said firmly. "He is a senior federal judge and the father of your local police chief." A gasp rippled outward. A woman near the front dropped her phone. "Judge Samuel Pierce," she whispered. "Oh my God, that's him." Phones didn't drop in boredom. They dropped in shame. Samuel opened his folder, revealing a thick file lined with oversight seals. "I've been reviewing misconduct complaints in this area." "Silently," he said. "I didn't announce myself. I didn't speak. Because I wanted to know how I'd be treated if you didn't know who I was." He turned and met Kessler's eyes. "Now I know." Kessler's face drained of color. He staggered back, hands twitching at his sides. I didn't know. I didn't recognize you. This was all a misunderstanding." But the crowd didn't buy it. Neither did the silence. Chief Inspector Rowe raised her radio again. "Officer, Kessler is relieved of duty, effective immediately. He will be detained and questioned by Internal Affairs." The words cracked through the air like thunder. Gasps became words. Words became cheers, not of celebration, but of justice. Samuel didn't gloat. He simply folded his file shut, placed it in his satchel, and gave a subtle nod. Two more officers approached. Quiet, intent. One held sealed evidence packets. Neither acknowledged Kessler. They walked straight to Samuel. "Sir, we're ready when you are." Samuel turned back one last time. "You never asked who I was," he said. "You just assumed." Heads began to nod across the crowd. No applause, just presence. Just people realizing they'd watched something wrong and said nothing. Samuel's voice carried again. "You didn't fail because you enforced the law. You failed because you mistook your bias for justice." Even Kessler's fellow officers took a step back. He stood alone. Now. As he edged toward his cruiser, an Internal Affairs agent moved into his path. "Remain where you are," Rowe said. "You are now under internal investigation." Kessler's shoulders sagged. One of the officers removed his badge, then his weapon. "Hand them over." He did, slowly, mouth trembling, eyes hollow. "This doesn't stop at Internal Affairs," Rowe added. "You'll also report to the Federal Ethics Board." Kessler looked up, voice cracking. "This wasn't personal." Samuel turned. "It became personal the moment you made it public." Then, to the crowd, "To those who stood and did nothing, maybe next time, think before you assume who someone is." He locked eyes with the teen who had filmed the entire ordeal. A single nod passed between them. You made sure truth had a witness. As Samuel stepped into the SUV, a screen inside flickered to life. It displayed his full title, Judge Samuel Pierce, Federal Oversight Liaison, Department of Justice. Someone in the crowd whispered, "This man watches over everyone. Do you think the antagonist deserves forgiveness or should face the full consequences? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit like and subscribe." As Samuel reached for the SUV door, the teenage girl with the phone approached. Timid, unsure. "I've never seen someone win without yelling," she said softly. "It made me feel like we can still change something." Samuel smiled. Not wide, not performative, just enough to let her know she was right. The video went viral within days, not because it was loud or violent, but because it was quiet and undeniable. Comments flooded in. "This is how true power moves." Dignity didn't flinch, it just waited. When asked for a formal statement, Samuel simply replied, "Power isn't in how loud you get, it's in what you leave behind." He left one more message for those who'd ever felt invisible. If they overlook your worth, Don't lower yourself to prove it. Be still. One day, they'll have to see. 2 weeks later, he passed the same precinct. Officers stepped aside. This time. "Good afternoon, sir." Inside, Kessler sat through ethics training. He didn't speak, but he listened. Back at DOJ headquarters, a new file was stamped. Phase 2. National Conduct Reform. Lead assigned, J. Samuel Pierce. As he walked down the corridor, his voice echoed, "Legacy isn't the noise you make. It's the silence they remember." You buy. If you loved this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that dignity is for everyone, not just the powerful. And in the comments, tell us, should Officer Kessler be forgiven? Or should he face the full consequences? Let's talk.